Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to Spill the Beans. My name's Duncan Goldie. My guest this week is John from Arterys. So John's actually the founder of Arterys, which now employs over 70 people. It's a Silicon Valley startup, and he's kind of basically come into an industry and created a number of different platforms which are now active in 28 countries. So it's really interesting to get inside the mind of a Silicon Valley entrepreneur and find out a lot more about the growth and the traction that this product's been getting, and sits under a number of different industries such as radiology and cardiology, but it's really providing a service which is very much needed within an industry which is kind of taking the brunt of force off the back of COVID and things like that. So really interesting to hear the solutions that they've come up with. So I enjoyed it, and I hope you guys do too. John, hi, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me on the podcast. How's everything going? Tell me, whereabouts in the world are you right now? Because we have people from everywhere.
Sure. So right now I'm in the Bay Area, and that's where the Arterys headquarters is. And I just live across the bay and have been here for the past, it feels like 5 months straight.
Really? So California, so it's obviously quite a hot, coronavirus situation over there at the moment. What's your own personal setup like? Do you have a good sort of working from home setup, or?
Yeah, it's all right. I have a couple kids, so I've essentially figured it out now. So I'm kind of in the coasting, but the first 3 months without childcare was definitely rough. So I think we're all adapting and figuring out how to make this happen. And I think for now we're okay. I think the preschools are open, but I think maybe in a couple months, if things start to get bad, we're going to be back to square one with no childcare, and for us, but also for a lot of people in this area. So things may change.
Yeah, definitely. It's a case of just kind of monitoring it at the moment, I suppose. But yeah, I do feel sorry for a couple of our neighbours have got kids, and we sort of get roped into entertaining them outside of work hours sometimes. But
Yep.
That's about enough for me. I don't know how you manage to cope, or how anyone manages to cope working from home with them. Very demanding, anyway. Very demanding co-workers.
Yep, for sure.
Great. Well, yeah, obviously, I came across Arterys and was kind of, really interested by, the movements you guys are making within the industry. But before we go into that in a bit more detail, tell me about you. So, you're obviously in California right now. Have you always been there? Like, what's your career kind of been prior to Arterys?
Sure. So prior to Arterys, I was actually at Stanford, and that's what brought me to the Bay Area. I did my PhD there. In computational engineering, and before that, I worked in industry, kind of in Germany for a few quarters, and then originally from Vancouver, Canada. So that was kind of my career path, and I always thought I was going to be an engineer, actually. I came to Stanford for a PhD and more the academic route, and I kind of got looped into the whole entrepreneurship while in Silicon Valley, and it is truly a contagious atmosphere, especially when you see all these other companies in the area do very amazing things. You kind of get looped into it, and it's been a great career decision to move to Silicon Valley and to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously you're in good company over there at the moment. So tell us about Arterys, and how did the concept come around, and what is it that you guys are doing?
Sure. So I was actually, as I mentioned, I was in my small little cubicle during my PhD, and one of my co-founders kind of came to me originally because he had sleep apnea, and sleep apnea was one of those things where it's difficult to treat. There's a few different options on the market, but at the time, he came to me with this idea to bring kind of personalized medicine, specifically in his case, but potentially the option of doing kind of computational or simulations around trying to identify, both diagnose and treat patients with kind of obstructive airways. And because that was my background of kind of on the aerodynamics side and computational engineering side. So we were what originally started as a pet project. We realized that potentially that there's something more here. And through a little bit of kind of working together with a few different other people in kind of project groups for a class, we realized, why don't we start a company around this? And originally the company was called Morpheus, which is the god of sleep and dreams. And what we did was we thought we were going to target sleep apnea, but we realized that it's a tough market to get into because the way patients are diagnosed is typically through sleep studies, and there's no CT imaging done for, as part of the kind of the patient journey. And trying to change the diagnostic pathway, as I've been in this industry for 10 years, is very, very difficult. And there needs to be, consensus statements and guidance documents if there's going to be a brand new way that you're going to diagnose a patient. So we realized, that's a 10, 20-year endeavor. And was there something a little bit closer to home that we could commercialize? And so we met our two other co-founders that were radiologists at Stanford at the time. And we started, what was originally the idea was to develop a cardiac MRI application called 4D Flow, where we were able to measure blood flow non-invasively using an MRI. And we commercialized that with GE Healthcare. So we basically from 2013 to about 2018, we were in the development phase, creating that technology. And part of the reason why I would say Arterys is where it is today is because we had made a decision back in 2012 to basically leverage the cloud to process this data, these medical images that were coming from MRI scans at the time. And that was one of the key reasons, I think, where we are today, is that we decided to go completely cloud native, multi-tenant, and leverage new technologies and obviously AWS and GPUs. And at the time, it wasn't about even machine learning or deep learning. It was purely about trying to take these large scale medical images that couldn't fit in the infrastructure of hospitals, which at the time was PACS. And the idea was to send those up into the cloud, process them, and send back a result to the cardiologist or radiologist that could give information about what's happening with the patient's heart. And that's kind of where it all started. And then from there, we realized that there was a much broader opportunity to expand leveraging the platform that we had created for ourselves. And from there, we essentially grew the business from essentially that cardiac MRI application and brought in to add more applications. And then and today, where it's essentially created a platform that allows us to bring in partners and to bring in third-party vendors that can leverage the 50 million investment that we've built on the platform and essentially bring these great technologies, these clinical applications, right to the clinic. And that's kind of been our strategy.
Fantastic. And I mean, what's the kind of, I suppose, have you done any sort of data analysis over, how impactful it's been for, the patients or the clinicians in themselves, like how, in terms of the real use application?
Yeah.
Have you been able to do any of those kind of studies?
Yeah. So I think that's one of the key pieces I think is missing generally in the industry, is what I refer to as kind of real world evidence, is the not just running clinical trials, not running clinical assessments for regulatory clearance. It's what I'm describing is, once it's actually been cleared, getting that out into the market and kind of not really post-market surveillance, but more working with physicians and working with the key stakeholders to determine how well it's doing. And so we commercialized that technology back in 2018. So it's been about 2 or 3 years since that technology has been out there. And absolutely, we've written papers ourselves. We've written papers with research partners. And the consensus, at least for the cardiac MR application, is that what we're able to do is a few different things. One is with 4D Flow specifically, it allows physicians to actually see things that they've never seen before. So typically with ultrasound, you're a little bit limited in the window at which you can visualize and quantify blood flow or regurg in valves. And 4D Flow allows you to actually see this in a very in a three-dimensional picture. So you can visualize any angle and be able to quantify exactly how much flow is going forward or backwards within any specific area. And that has provided a lot more insight for surgeries for patients with typically congenital heart disease or valvular diseases. And we've been able to show that it has impacted patient care paths. And anybody who's had this technology has absolutely said this, where with ultrasound, they would have gone one way, and with 4D-Flow, it actually changed that care path because it provided more accurate data. So that's on the physics, on the technology side, let's say, and the other is on the machine learning side. So we've automated a lot of the kind of tedious processes associated with a cardiac MR procedure. So automating the contouring the ventricles of the heart, automating identifying certain landmarks in the heart, and deep learning specifically has been fantastic for moving us from, let's say, machine learning techniques that have been around for 20, 30 years into techniques where now we can leverage data scientists who don't have, let's say, specific medical backgrounds that can essentially provide great technology that can be developed a lot faster and is a lot more accurate, essentially. So we've been able to show that we can save the time it takes to process an exam, like basically from about half an hour, we can bring that down to about 10 minutes or less. So it's like huge savings if you can automate the contouring and identification of certain views and landmarks in the heart. So, and we have the data to support that for the cardiac MR application. But it's been all, I've been in this for 10 years, and we've been focused on it for the past 5 years. So it's not something that has taken overnight. And I think that's one of the key things that I'll mention is that, man, like I didn't have gray hairs when I started, and this is a marathon, not a sprint. And for anybody who thinks they can create clinical evidence, so not just regulatory clearance, not just running a little clinical trial here or there, it's like prolonged evidence at multiple sites with multiple vendors to show that the impact to patients. And even for us, we're still scratching the surface, and we've been in the industry for 10 years. And these startups, when I see like that they think they can change the industry in a year, it's like, well, they're going to have to grow some gray hairs.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be prepared to go all in, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you obviously spoke there about, it taking, quite a long time to this point to get, the good traction and the good recognition that you've received so far. What does the kind of future state look like? I mean, in terms of, is it more longitudinal studies in the kind of short to medium term? Is it, where are you taking the platform? And it sounded like you had a few different products there as well. Are you looking at expanding those?
Yeah, so I think great question. I think there's kind of two strategies for companies in our space. Kind of one strategy is that you can create specific clinical applications that target specific needs and really, go deep. And I think to have broad adoption, a lot of investment will need to be done to actually, have that traction in the market. So, obviously the regulatory clearances, the clinical assessments, the real world evidence, the publications, the changing consensus statements, the change in medical guidelines, all of that is really required to impact not the early adopters, because the early adopters may take it, but it's the laggards, right? So that strategy we've taken for that cardiac MR application, but we realized that we don't have the bandwidth ourselves to repeat that for 10 more applications. And there's, some would argue, 10,000 clinical applications that could be developed in this space. So on the flip side, we've taken more of a platform strategy approach where we recognize that we can't do it alone. We recognize that we need to be able to partner with all these other vendors that are creating great solutions that potentially combine together, create a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of strong service line offering. And a couple other vendors have started to do this, but I think with where we're going, we have the opportunity to leverage the platform that we built to really accelerate that thinking of bringing together multiple partners into a much stronger clinical solution. And I'll give you an example. Right now we have a great clinical application for detecting lung nodules and chest CTs. And one of the feedbacks we get is, this is great, but we'd also be able to detect fractures, or we detect emphysema, PEs, COVID-19. And ideally, if we could detect, 20 pathologies and not just one, that'd be fantastic. And that's where we need partners. We need partners to come together to provide that into a single workflow, into a single, what I call clinical application that is seamless. And I think part of where we're going is kind of essentially providing workflow as a service to all these partners that have great algorithms that do something specific. But what we can do is we can integrate that into the clinical workflow very efficiently, because we've done that with already our own clinical applications and with partners that we've already brought on. So what that specifically means is, obviously integrating that into our back end, which allows that algorithm to scale with demand. It allows with all the possible integrations, so EMR integrations, dictation integrations, PACS integrations, risk integrations, being able to have the performance that's required, being able to have a native viewer that allows physicians to interact with the results. Because at the end of the day, AI is not foolproof. It will always get something wrong. And you need the ability to accept, reject, or modify. And that kind of workflow is critical to adoption and also to retrain the algorithms. So, I can't emphasize enough about workflow, and that's kind of where we're focused, is working with the partners, creating the algorithms, what we refer to as producers, and bringing those into a much broader marketplace. You can call it kind of open innovation platform, we call it, is the ability to bring in these partners to create great derivative solutions. And I can't emphasize enough this idea of the workflow side and how critical it is to success. Because again, one thing that I've learned over the past 10 years is you can have the most amazing algorithm that's 100% accurate all the time. If it involves an extra click for radiologists, they may not even do it. Like they don't care. And in fact, the radiologist is actually the one most difficult user to satisfy. And it's actually there's use cases for AI that are outside of radiology that are seeing more traction because the bar is much lower, versus radiologists are actually quite optimized in terms of speed and clicks.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned briefly there about how COVID can be one of the things that can appear in detection. So, I mean, how has the whole pandemic impacted both your kind of commercial strategy, and also have you adopted the platform to be able to be tailored more towards the pandemic in, I suppose, the time where so much is unknown?
Yeah. So, thankfully for us, this, in a way, where I guess the silver lining is that we've developed a platform that is built for a pandemic. Like our platform is deployed remotely. It's constantly, it's online. It allows anybody in the world, no matter where they are, to have access to any data they want. And it helps with collaboration and sharing and learning. And so it's built, like the DNA of the company is for remote work, right? So from that perspective, we've seen that more and more users are actually accessing the platform from home. And that kind of bolsters our value proposition of why we're building what we're building. I think in terms of COVID specifically, we've seen imaging volumes come down dramatically, especially for elective procedures or less urgent procedures. And I would say that that's definitely impacted the sales of the entire industry. I think for us, the sales cycles are very long. So the ones that were supposed to close in February, March, April, it's been just more of a delay because of the funds associated at that hospital. And now we're seeing things coming back. So people are starting to re-engage procurement, and things are slowly starting to come back. And for us, it's not an urgency, because we've actually just closed a large, close to $28 million Series C round, and that's given us the runway that allows us to work with the partners and build more of the development adoption that's required before actually ramping hard on the commercial side. So what we want to do is build the evidence that's required in the industry and work with the partners to create that evidence before we try to scale that commercial dial. And I think that's what a lot of the industry needs right now, is more data to support these use cases and less of a sales and marketing effort.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, evidence and the ethics that comes with your business model and stuff like that as well, as knowing, not to push people in a time of need and stuff like that as well,
Yeah.
Which is, that's amazing. So, I guess in terms of the the kind of whole industry, and how your business model is tailored very much towards remote working and remote access, and I suppose just overall access to healthcare. Are you taking any of your ideas of what you've implemented for Arterys from other businesses, or are you seeing more adoption? Are you more sort of at the front line and you've seen more adoption of similar techniques that you have already implemented in the past?
Yeah. So I would say that depends what kind of area we're describing. So I think when we started, we're surrounded by a lot of technology companies. And so what my background, technology, and the others in the company kind of has helped us take more of maybe a forward stance from the, let's say, standard healthcare company. But we saw in other areas these sort of technologies growing, and we absolutely leveraged them. Like, for example, in deep learning. And deep learning was an area that was started back in 2012, and it came to healthcare around 2015. And we were one of the first companies to actually take that technology from this other area and apply it in our space. And we were the first ones to get FDA clearance for a deep learning based algorithm that's derived in the cloud. And for us, we constantly try to do that. I think on the clinical side, it's a little bit harder to innovate or come up with unique ways to generate the evidence required in a shorter amount of time. We haven't cracked that nut yet. We are being innovative, I would say, from being able to run trials remotely. So from home, contracting physicians, that maybe have more time at night to run through certain studies. So from that perspective, I would guess, we're trying to shorten the time in order to generate the ground truth and to generate the actual assessments that allow us to measure accuracy, those sorts of things. And I would say that maybe that I would like that to be even more streamlined, because right now it is a challenge to even get into hospitals and extract the data that's required, because some of the integrations that I would like to get are just not taking longer. For example, extracting any sort of usage data from existing PACS solutions in terms of how long certain studies take. That's an area where there aren't great APIs, there aren't great ways to just pull that data out. And if that data was more available, then we could compare, performance without AI and the performance with AI. And that's where I wish I could leverage other companies or other ways to kind of streamline that. But it's a good question, and we always try to look into other areas, look at other companies and what they're doing. But in most of the cases, I look around and there isn't an obvious answer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if there was, everyone would do it, right? But
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, we're pretty much out of time, but obviously, the platform and everything you're doing is gaining amazing traction, and for very good reason. So, if people did want to find out a little bit more about, Arterys and yourself and everyone else involved, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, pretty simple. Just arterys.com, and I think that there you can kind of a flavor of the products and the team, and especially around the marketplace and what we're doing in that space. What I think when you go to the website, there's a way you can actually interact with all of our applications live in browser. So that allows you to test. That allows you to quickly see what the value proposition is for all the vendors we have. I think today we have over 30 vendors on the marketplace and growing every day. So I think we're seeing a ton of traction with the partners, and what we want to do is kind of reduce the time it takes from code to clinic through this kind of open innovation platform that's available on the website. So happy to have all of you just reach out through there, and or send us an email, john@arterys.com.
Perfect. Well, I'm sure there will be lots of people interested off the back of this. So congratulations on all the work that you've done so far, and very excited to see what the future has in store. So thank you very much, John. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Duncan. Bye-bye.
So that's a wrap for us this week then, guys. Thanks very much to John from Arterys for taking the time to chat with me. Really interesting, as always, as I'm very lucky to be able to sit down with, the founders of such, innovative businesses and sort of get inside the mind of a lot of these guys, which are really picking apart the health service as it is at the moment and finding ways to innovate and kind of get better healthcare for the patient at the end of the day. So it's I'm really lucky and really inspiring to hear from people like John, who hopefully going to be expanding into the UK very, very soon as well, with their product, which has got a lot of traction in America. So if you do want to find out a little bit more information from Arterys, then click the links below. Otherwise, stay safe and I'll see you guys next time.